Thomas Catenacci is a reporter at the Free Beacon, and he wrote this article, and I came across it, and I was really grateful, Thomas, that we were able to connect with you today because you're doing great reporting work with the Free Beacon. Thanks for being with us this afternoon.
It's great to be here. Thank you so much for having me, Annie.
Yeah, of course. So, everybody's following Doge. Everybody is following Doge, left, right, alike. It's probably one of the most bipartisan efforts I've seen, where they have a lot of support from people who are saying, find the waste. But another thing that we're starting to see a lot too is find the fraud. I want you to talk about Stacey Abrams and what you have uncovered here with the Free Beacon and reported on. Tell us a story here on what you discovered.
Yeah, well, rolling off of that initial point that you just made, a lot of the conversation around Doge so far has been focused on USAID programs, just kind of blatantly wasteful programs to fund ridiculous things across the world. And there's no doubt it's important to be aware of those things and to call them out and to defund those programs. But they're smaller, right? We're talking about kind of $1 million grant here, $200,000 grant here, et cetera, et cetera. But when it comes to the actual sizable, impactful programs, a lot of people sort of in the federal government would point you in the direction of climate programs. And there's none bigger than the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. It's an EPA program instituted by the Inflation Reduction Act in late 2022. It's the largest non-tax investment in the IRA, which itself is an absolute behemoth of a climate bill, as you're aware. And it turns out that this group called Power Forward Communities, which was stood up after the IRA was passed in anticipation of this program and its grants being funneled out, received $2 billion. Just months.
$2 billion.
$2 billion. Yeah, with a B, to be very clear, an absolute massive haul for a group that, again, was brand new and was started with the help of Stacey Abrams. And so this really should raise all the alarm bells, all the sirens of any sort of watchdog, of anyone following, as you said, wasteful spending. This is borderline corrupt, and I'm sure there will be investigations into it. But again, this is a brand new group, and it reported at the time that it received this $2 billion from the Biden administration under the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund program, it had just reported $100 in total revenue.
Gosh, I could do that.
That kind of
That's outrageous. I was hoping you would say that because, Thomas, the timeline here that made me go, holy crap, this is outrageous. This Power Forward Communities organization here, they were founded in late 2023. They reported $100 in 100, not B billion, 100, $100 in total revenue for the 3 months that they'd been in operation, and they got a $2 billion grant?
Exactly. Yeah. Sadly, it's all true what you just said and what we're talking about here. And, to be honest, when I came across this information, I had to quadruple check it because I didn't believe it. There's no way that a group that new, that inexperienced has the infrastructure or the staffing or the connections to be able to handle $2 billion. And so just to kind of, lead up to my next point here, because it continues to get crazier in my view. If you were to ask this group, now they didn't answer any of my questions or my inquiries as expected. They completely ignored me. But if you were to get a response, I would imagine that they would say, well, we have partners that are that have a lot of experience. And so we're going to kind of lean on our partners to make sure all this funding is doled out to the appropriate areas and to the appropriate groups across the country. And the problem with that is the partners are themselves very, very political. And I'll just give you a few examples. One of the partners of this Abrams group is the Southern Economic Advancement Project. Another is Fair Count. Both of those groups were founded in 2019 by Stacey Abrams, and they have nothing to do with climate or energy efficiency or anything that the EPA does in its own mandate. They are racial equity and election-related groups that do mainly progressive things in Georgia. So that kind of makes me scratch my head. Another one is two other partners that this group boasts is the AFL-CIO and the American Federation of Teachers, two very powerful Democratic-aligned labor unions. And just to keep kind of not to throw too much information at you.
No, give it all.
Untangling this web. The American Federation of Teachers president, Randy Weingarten, as you and your listeners will know very well, she sits on the board with Abrams of a separate group called Climate Power. Climate Power unleashed the largest advertising campaign in support of Kamala Harris, $55 million in September. And so it all kind of leads back to Democratic elections, Democratic campaigns, Democratic and progressive causes, and interest groups. In other words, this money wasn't tied to Republican or conservative or, maybe pro-oil and gas interests. It all kind of found its way back to these environmental interest groups that were new, that were tied to Democrats, and so on and so forth.
So I'm going to ask some dumb questions. So when we're talking about this $2 billion that goes to this very fresh, brand new organization, had been in, 3 months that it had existed and reported $100 in total revenue. Correct my facts if I am off here. The $2 billion that this organization received that was led by Stacey Abrams, where did that $2 billion come from?
It came out of the Environmental Protection Agency. The reason why it came out of EPA was because EPA was tasked with overseeing a program called the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. That program was created by Congress in the Inflation Reduction Act of 2022. So I'm not sure. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, this is taxpayer money. No question about that.
Yes. This was allocated by Congress, taxpayer money, 100%.
Do these organizations, once they're founded, do they support candidates that help their cause?
Well, if you tie it all back to its partners and kind of follow that thread, it almost always leads exclusively to Democrats and Democratic campaigns. However, Power Forward Communities itself is unable to give to campaigns. So you can certainly argue that the money will find its way there, but that isn't entirely crystallized as of yet.
Do they know, what kind of expenditures Power Forward Communities, what kind of investments that they would make with that $2 billion? Have you been able to determine any of that yet?
Yeah. So what it is intended for is what's called energy efficiency upgrades. And all that is electrifying people's homes across the country. So they want to take the $2 billion and tell the federal government, trust us, we'll handle it from here, and then themselves act as a sort of federal independent agency and give money as they see fit to projects that would do things like, rip out gas stoves from apartment buildings and replace them with induction stoves, or rip out a gas-powered water heater from someone's home and replace it with a heat pump water heater that's electric and not gas-powered. So at the end of the day, it all leads back to the climate agenda and the agenda of transitioning away from fossil fuels.
Ooh, there's a lot of money in this. I hope that you continue to hustle on these stories and more, and I hope that you'll reach out to Brad, our producer, and I followed you on X as well. I'll be paying attention because I think one of the things we've discussed in the show, and we've definitely heard it from our listeners when in phone calls as well, is, we want to get all of the money clawed back that we can through Doge, but if people are gaming the system, if there's fraud and if there's abuse and if there's been a bureaucratic system that's set up to sustain itself in spite of the people who are funding it through their taxpayer dollars, we really want to know those names. And the Stacey Abrams one here is a very, very interesting one, I think.
yeah, we'll continue to dig through it.
All right. Well, Thomas, we appreciate your time today. Keep up with it. We'll be in touch and we'll continue to follow your work.
Really appreciate it, Annie.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.